the city of civilizations, the address of peace, brotherhood, and trust, Silivri. And its history that defies centuries. Its culture distilled from ages and extending to the present day while reaching into the future with its nature that encompasses all the beauties of life. It virtually shouts, with the unique human stories in every corner. In Silivri, because there is life. And documenting that the life in Silivri exists in all its colors in every neighborhood for the future. The stop on our journey, which we embarked on to pass it on to future generations, is this time Selimpaşa. Throughout history, it has managed to exist side by side as if it were Silivri's little brother. Selimpaşa, which has hosted many civilizations just like Silivri, has also seen its most brilliant period. It begins to thrive with the conquest of Istanbul. Let's take a brief look at the history of Selimpaşa, which contains many historical artifacts that extend to the present day.
Selimpaşa is one of the important Marmara ports in Thrace. We do not actually know for certain when the first settlement there was, but it should be contemporaneous with Silivri.
This was a complete trade center. I mean, it was a place with shopping and transportation activities. This was a village with a very high economic level. Given the conditions of that time, it might have been a town, a large town.
Our folks say bigados, but we went to Greece for a trip. They call Selimpaşa Epiphates.
Its name is Epiphates. Epiphates means on top of the ray. Marmara is well known as a place with a very rich marine life and marine flora, and it is one of the ports of that bountiful sea, also one of the commercial centers. A pier where the products of Thrace are exported, more of a pier than a port.
Even four names. Changed in Selimpaşa, first Pilvat, then Agados. After that, Selimpaşa, it became, this is a village that has changed its name 4 times.
I think from here, wine routes, transfers, ports. We even know that the customs is here. The port customs.
Selimpaşa customs transferred to Istanbul. Vegetables, fruits, flour and herbs. Giyah. Animal feed. We can refer to it as animal feed. Grass. It was being sent to Istanbul from this pier.
Saint Paraskevi is a very holy woman for the Orthodox world. They see her as a deity, as a saint. They consider themselves very sacred, even give a lot of value.
During the Byzantine period, the owner of this farm was a young woman, a young lady, but a benevolent one. That is, she was someone down who worked here and helped people in their work. She was a person who helped others. She was born in the year 910 and passed away at a very young age in 932. In other words, she died at the age of 22.
He's known for helping patients, people. He is referred to as an angel of goodness. That is, for those times, then he goes to Jerusalem to help the people there as well. On his way back from Jerusalem, as he returns, around 30 kilometers before reaching, his life comes to an end. He dies in Kalikrafya, known in the past as Mimar Sinan.
Him, the people in this village, people who do not forget their kindness. Over time, people who were defeated here in wars. In the past, Moldova and Romania were under our control during the Ottoman period. They migrate from here to Moldova.
The Moldovans are taking care of it. Indeed, the remains belonging to him, this is important in Christianity, the parts of the bodies of saints, their hair, their bones, both are called relics. The preservation of those relics is very important. Repeated, the relics belonging to him are currently preserved in Romania.
And still, The places where he was born are visited by the Orthodox. His bones are currently in the city of Iași, Romania. In this city, they go and fulfill their religious duties. The Orthodox, they become pilgrims, meaning they see him. He is actually a very influential figure by us. He is not well known, but he is a very well known figure in the Orthodox world and among Christians.
In the 1800s, at the same time in Selimpasha, an important figure emerged. This figure is Dr. Sarendi Erhiani. He was born in Selimpasha in the year 1809.
He was a doctor of Greek origin. He became an orphan at the age of 10. They brought him to a teacher named Lugaris to stay with him in Istanbul, Balatfener. They take him by the hand and send him to France for education. He returns as a doctor. Sarandar Hienis.
He was in Germany, various places in France and in Italy. Then Mustafa Reşit was presented to the Sultan by the Sultan. He was presented to Sultan Aziz. He was surrounded. Sarandi was appointed by the Sultan as the chief physician of the imperial court, meaning we were appointed as the Sultan's private chief physician.
From there, until he retired, he didn't spend the money he earned anymore. After retiring, he earns big money and becomes wealthy.
Doctor, in his hometown of Sarandi, Selim Pasha opened a school with the idea of opening. He brought the idea to life, and with his personal wealth, he established the girls' school that still stands today in Selim Pasha. Then, a teacher's school, these were boarding schools in the old language, a theology school, and a primary school, buildings for their accommodation. Additionally, a small chapel was created for them to perform their worship. This is important. Selim Pasha, Doctor, as a result of Sarandi's efforts, it became the first campus town in the Ottoman territories.
Since Selim Pasha was born in Bigados, he made investments in education and culture in the lands where he lived and was born. He built this complex in 1857. In the place we are in, as you can see, only girls were educated at primary and secondary levels. The girls who graduated from here went on to become nurses and teachers in the Ottoman Empire. Within the borders of the empire, they were able to provide educational services to their own communities and offer healthcare services.
Alexis Apokavkos built a tower there. These towers are important. The tower in Epivate is important right now because its foundation is still standing. The same tower is also in Kumburgaz and in Fener. It is intended to see the wide horizon in places with a bit of flat terrain. In this way, architectural works have been created. That's the name of Kumburgaz right there. Burgaz, the Burgaz in Lüleburgaz, the Greek word purgos, means tower.
Selim Pasha stayed and camped here with his army for approximately 12 to 14 months. He was captivated by the natural beauty here. And during his time as Grand Vizier, he made many investments in this area within the Ottoman Empire. In fact, today, the only remaining structure is the twin fountain, which was built by Selim Sırrı Pasha, after whom it is named, located just at the back of this complex on the southern side.
The people of Selim Pasha to the Ottoman army. While the army passing through there was being supplied, the crops were trampled and damage was done to the vineyards. Due to their resistance for this reason, the people of Selim Pasha were taken by the Ottoman army to Deliones, 5 kilometers away. That is, they were exiled to Ortaköy. And the walls of Selim Pasha were demolished. As far as we know, the walls of Selim Pasha were never the same after the conquest. They were not rebuilt. Therefore, there are no significant remnants of the walls of Selim Pasha.
Houses will be built in the village. They cannot be built. Why can't they be built? At that time they were built with stone. Buildings, stone is needed. They used to come to our village, headmen with 5 lira. 200 for a car. There were also donkey carts for 5 lira. Load it up, pay 5 lira, and go. They demolished these beautiful buildings. Their stones were sold to Kavaklı village.
He would give a penny for a brick, take the pickaxe and chisel, remove all the bricks there. He would give a penny per brick.
Currently preserved can be salvaged. A very serious Ottoman architecture. I mean, they call this Greek architecture. No, this is Ottoman architecture.
Afterwards, it was used as a military barracks, then for a long period. The boats we are currently in were manufactured there. There were carpenters, blacksmiths, and so on.
It was used as a barn, used as an onion storage, used as blacksmith workshops, used as a boathouse. There were carpentry shops and many businesses. If I remember correctly, in 1991, those buildings became part of a parcel with registered areas within the conservation-oriented zoning plan approved by the Monuments Board.
After that, with the contributions, support, and efforts of the mayor of the time, a project was undertaken here, and it was restored as a municipal building. It continued to be used as a municipal building for a period. Yes, it's a wonderful place.
Having many wonderful historical buildings is one of the main features that distinguishes Selimpaşa from our other neighborhoods. However, the common features with our other neighborhoods are countless. One of them is having been subjected to the population exchange, one of the sorrowful turning points in our history, hosting families. It demonstrates that solidarity and cooperation can make unity possible even during those difficult years. Standing shoulder to shoulder in Selimpaşa,
Our Selimpe. When our grandfathers came here in the 1920s, it was like a corner of paradise. It was a lush green town, adorned with vineyards, gardens, and trees. It was a small village, but it was full of greenery, abundant with fruit trees and birds. This is the kind of place our grandfathers found.
We are generally all immigrants from Greece, from Selimpaşa. Well, if you ask anyone, they say we are immigrants from Thessaloniki. Some are from Drama, some from Kavala, some came from other cities. But we all say we are from Thessaloniki. There are patriots, people from Drama, Yoruks, there are people like this. In Selimpaşa,
we are not adventurers, we are exchanges. Forced migration. My grandfather, my eldest uncle, my aunt, my other aunt were born in Thessaloniki, Greece. 19th Independence War. Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, when they won, they were forced to board a train here from Thessaloniki. They were dropped off in Satalka. They got off the train, but the train I mentioned, they came in wagons meant for animals. In other words, like animals, the Greeks filled them all up there and forcibly transferred them here from Edirne.
Initially, my father and 18 families came here. Across from the market you see today, Bel. They planted melons there. Back then there were no tractors, nothing. They had just arrived from Greece.
In 1924, our grandfathers Dubal came with the population exchanges. We have been here since 24. Under the conditions of that time, 300 families, 400 families came and are living here. All the people of this region are in this area. Çatalca, Silivri, Şile, Bakırköy, Mimar Sinan, Büyükçekmece. All of our people living here are from Thessaloniki and its surroundings. Our citizens who came from Bulgaria and its surroundings from Greece are living here since that day.
The elders usually talk about Selimpaşa. In Selimpaşa, there are actually a few different ethnicities. That is Pomak, Adin, Patriot, Kasal. Among them are Yoruks, and following that, there is also a group referred to as Yoruks, but known as Dramalı.
The Drama say accident. from Kalambak village. Let me also say this, they were very wealthy there. There were very large lands, and they only engaged in agriculture, but a lot of livestock farming, agriculture. After arriving, some of those who came from there knew farming, some did not. Those who knew farming were only the immigrants from the Drama region. Since they knew farming, they started to grow crops and began to benefit. My grandmother used to tell me about them like a fairy tale. She would say, "Oh, my son, believe me, when we went to the field," she would say, "we couldn't find a place to put the goods. And when we went to the market, Muram, we would put the produce on the horse cart and go to Drama there too." A lot of Jews, the citizens there would buy those goods. On the way back, what was the money spent on? Do you know? Salt on kerosene. There was no money for anything else. Everything was from the field, from the house. There was no count of the quinces. There was no count of the ceilings. There was no count of the chickens, geese, turkeys. Whenever you wanted, whatever you wanted, chicken, slaughter it. Turkey, slaughter it. Sheep, slaughter them. They lived such an abundant life. But when they came here, my grandmother was in need of even one egg in the early years, because they didn't bring anything from there to here. What did they give? May God have mercy on them. May they rest in peace. Gazi Mustafa Kemal. Him, very admiring of him. I admire him a lot. It's as if my breath comes from him. You know, I live with his breath too. That's how it feels to me.
They drop them off at Satalka. They come to Selimpasha on foot. Of course, at that moment, while sending ours here, they take those here over there.
Just as we gave this place a new town name when they left here, they took the old name of this place, Epivatis, which was inherited from their ancestors, and named it there as Nea Epivatis, meaning new Epivatis.
Before the exchange, this was a region where Greeks lived. After the Greeks left, it became an area where people, especially from the Thessaloniki region, settled. And of course, there is always some information, even if it's hearsay. First they came to Mimar Sinan, walked to Katalsa, then they turned back again. From Doğan Tepe, Selimpasha was seen, liked, and it was decided to settle here.
How did they first start? To the Kozani province. With cars. That is, with wooden wheels. With cars, there were orphan cars. At that time, there were ancestors. With those to Kozani. They came from Kozani. They take the train to Thessaloniki. In Thessaloniki, there is a castle with a sea view. Thessaloniki Castle. Surrounded by walls. They are taken inside through the main gate. They set up tents there for a week in that high castle. They stayed for a week in tents. The ship arrived. The name of the ship that brought my father here was a ship named Aslan. Aslan is written on the ship. They board that ship. They arrive in 3 days. To Tuzla, in the infirmary in Tuzla, in a historical infirmary. They got vaccinated. After getting vaccinated, they board the same ship and come to Mimar Sinan, at Mimar Sinan from the pier. After disembarking there were wine cellars left by the spirits. There were barns, there were houses. They settled in those places.
People are coming here gradually. I mean, for example, someone coming from Nazlitz arrives about 1.5 months earlier. That's why a bit more. In Selimpasha, the old stone structures that can still stand, which can be considered historical monuments, are generally the places where those coming from Nazlitz reside and live.
Greece was already weakened by the war. They went there outside of the exchange. They gathered there. They started against our Turks. They began to persecute. Gangs formed. They were raiding houses. They were taking money, gold, earrings, whatever they could find. But the persecution they inflicted was not only on us, they were also doing it to people of Greek origin.
In a story from my grandmother, she told how her mom, during the exchange, hid gold in bread on ships. She would narrate that she brought her gold here inside the bread she baked in a house. This was one of the memories I never forgot, because at that time, during the population exchange, there were many bandits, gangs, and so on, whom we called outlaws. In these matters, they victimized such exchanges.
They came on foot to Selimpasha. Here, they found a house here, ours. There is a fountain just a bit ahead of the historical fountain. They found a house by the seaside. They said, this place is nice. They stayed here, then they were settled here.
Atatürk allocates 6 sections per child. He allocates sections. 3 children, 18. He allocates sections.
A time came, the veteran died. May God have mercy on him. The neighbors gathered. They were crying in front of our house. At that time, I was a bit more grown up, around 5 years old or so. All the crying women, I said, Grandma, why are you crying? Ah, my son, she said, Father veteran, Mustafa Kemal has died, she said. Well, I didn't understand death at that time. How is it, veteran Kemal? Ah, my son, she said, it was veteran Kemal who brought us here. He brought us here, saved us from the enemy, she said. But you would say that I was in need of an egg like this. She immediately did this. There were large headscarves. She took out a headscarf from there. Back then, I don't know, there were flags in schools, paper flags. She took out a folded flag like this. Ah, my son, she said, this is why we came, she said. We came for the sake of this red flag, she said.
The exchangees who gathered their belongings to return and live under the shadow of the crescent-starred red flag find themselves in Selimpasha, peace. Even though the longing of the first generation never ceases, they now embrace life tightly with the peace of being in the homeland, life. And for the second generation, Selimpasha, the place where they almost opened their eyes to life, is meaningful. It provides them with dozens of memories. To them,
in our childhood years in Selimpasha, there weren't many activities. Of course, I mean, Selimpasha was like a village, like this Pasha. We had vineyards. We would go and pick grapes from the vineyards. We had wineries. We had 4 wineries. We would sell grapes to the wineries. From here, there would be wine exports to Europe. These, over time, our vineyards came to an end.
We have been farming since our childhood. We were engaged in agriculture. My father was also involved in agriculture. Our childhood did not go very well because we couldn't find time to have fun or travel due to the fields because there were hardships. Back then, there were no universities, high schools, or even middle schools like there are now during my time. There was Silivri.
They were able to continue their education a bit more. Here I went for 13 years. To primary school. I couldn't get a diploma from the grade, but why? From helping my father.
In my childhood, there was no electricity in the village. When electricity first arrived, I guess it was in the 70s, right next to us, where the Ataturk bust is, there was a small building. They placed a janitor there. At that time, there were wooden poles. They erected them as children. We would even shout. I mean, when the first electricity arrived, the transformers came. We played and went there like that.
Honestly, my childhood years were they were painful. I was 12 years old when my father passed away. My brother was in the military. At that time, military service was 36 months, 3 years. I was, so to speak, the head of the household.
For example, in my childhood, in the morning from home, while going to school, while going to primary school, they would send us ahead with a needle. We would take the needle and lead the cattle while going to school.
In front of where the big stone school is, the cattle would gather. We would leave it there and go to school.
We used to take the cattle to the square here, down the hill. From here, roughly every day, that is, every morning they gathered maybe 200 animals, 150, 200 animals gathered. From here, they would go to our pastures. We all had sheep, we had chickens. Now, none of them are left. Now, there are more vehicles than chickens anyway. In Selimpasha, no chickens anymore, it's over.
If we say we truly experienced childhood in our youth, we did. We have games that have disappeared, we have national values. It is very difficult to see these today.
Our house in winter would be warm and cool. In summer, covered with lime on the top. Then they say blue nail-painted houses. We grew up in those too. We grew up in happiness.
So it has come to these levels here. Otherwise, it used to be very nice. No one would speak harshly to anyone. Everyone helped each other. In our neighborhood, we had our own oven in front of our house for the children because the bread oven was crowded, because bread was going to be made. Grandmother, may she rest in peace. I will light the oven today. If you're going to make bread, get ready. Come after me and put it in, and so on. There was that kind of solidarity here.
My father and his siblings were 14 in total every day. They would slaughter 2 barren sheep and leave them. They would go to the field. We were farmers. Meals were prepared at home. My grandmother had her own corner. She would eat first. Then the men would come from the field. They would wash their hands and faces. They would eat their meal. Then the women would eat. Then we would eat.
We were being children until we started school. You know, by the seaside, we used to collect seashells. We would swim in the sea and so on. After that, our house was also a bit close to the sea. It was by the seaside most of our childhood. Later on, as we grew up a bit, I mean, after starting elementary school, my late father would send us every summer to pick melons that had burst open.
The study? Oh, our childhood was so beautiful. Now I see the young people. We are happy. I can't see any. In the past, we used to be happy with tiny things.
This hill was even bigger where we are standing. Of course, some parts were taken off to make an Ataturk bus and to open up the square. From here downwards, when winter comes, the wood starts. Of course, it starts coming. The woodcutters unload the wood in front of the houses. There were machines back then for cutting wood. There was Ahmet Baysal, a machinist, a woodcutter like that. While he was cutting, we would say, Ahmet Abi, cut us a wheel too. He had him cut it, a wheel, and then there were things, there was Kemal Usta who made carts right next to the pool. He had a house right near the school. He used to make carts there. We had him drill it. They used to call it a berg, what is now called a drill. They would drill holes with the berger. We used to make wooden carts ourselves. We would let them roll down the hill all the way to the school.
The past. Our childhood passed in the way that all current children, mothers and fathers dream of for their children. I mean, we roamed around with knowledgeable tools. We skateboarded, we played marbles. We used slingshots, played football between 2 stones in the neighborhood. I mean, very beautiful events took place, and there was also a very different sense of sincerity.
Our childhood was spent entirely at the sea. It wouldn't be wrong if we said it. When we entered the sea, around 9 in the morning, we would only come out around 6 in the evening. We wouldn't even go for meals. We were at the seaside all day. We would take the mussels we collected from the sea and bring them to the shore. On the beach, of course, back then there weren't as many summer houses, not this much population. Selimpasha was a small place. We would cook the mussels on top of a biscuit tin and eat them. Mussels with bread was a very special meal back then. Actually, it has become a very valuable meal now too. And believe me, our skin would turn brown. But the interesting part is, during such times, we never got sick in the winter.
We would leave the house in just shorts and just a t-shirt. We would reach everywhere throughout the day. We would fill our stomachs with fruits. Everyone was relaxed. Everyone's door was open. There were no problems. Everyone knew each other. I think it was probably the best childhood compared to now. our times. We lived through the 80s era.
In our time, the doors of the houses you see around us would be left open. In fact, even in apartment culture, we would take off our shoes at the entrance of the apartment door and walk up on those old rugs laid on the stairs.
A child of 7 or 8 years old could know everything from the name of the midwife or nurse at the health center to the name of the council member at the local office. Or they could remember or care about it. Now there is no such thing.
In our childhood, it was beautiful. Selimpasha was very beautiful. There was the smell of dung. Animals, we had a lot of animals. Sheep, horses, donkeys. The donkey was like our regular shared taxi. I mean, it was very beautiful back then. It was beautiful during elementary school years. It was very beautiful until I went to the military. Our Selimpasha was really beautiful. I mean, no one was like that. Okay, there was some partisanship, but it wasn't that much. But everyone could open each other's doors, the door of the house. Now, there's no such thing.
I grabbed 2 fish by their tails, and while pulling, I went 100 meters, or maybe I didn't. A dog took one of them from my hand. I'm 8 years old. I couldn't protect both fish because I can't hold them in my arms. All meter, I'm also 1 meter tall. While dragging them with my hands, I managed to take one. I brought the other fish with both hands and looked at it. Half of the fish was eaten like this on the asphalt. Its head was like this. There was no head. It was left like this. The fish's head was eaten. Never forget that.
They enjoy the sea on their own for many years. The residents of Selimpasha, of course, when the calendars reached the 70s, just like in many towns in the region, a summer vacationer influx began in Selimpasha as well. Selimpasha, which has made a name for itself among Istanbul's most popular summer resorts, cherishes the friendships formed with the incoming summer vacationers, with sparkling eyes and the excitement of the first day holding them in their memories.
Back then, when the fields were sold, when the Yazdıkçılar said the future was coming and villas started to be built, elite people arrived. They came to the places you see behind me right now. Zek, Baseskoglu, Şener Şen, Ali Şenenevi. Celebrities like Ahmet Bardar, the owner from Kalakeli, were living in the site behind me.
There were many celebrities, I mean, from members of parliament, those who have served as ministers, to film actors. Here and there, Ayhan Işık, he passed away here. We were very close with them. Of course, we knew each other. For example, the house where I was born was right by the sea. The house where I was born, we could swim from there to Kent, for example. We could enter their areas too. The sea there is beautiful. We would go all the way there and swim. I mean, no one would say anything, but now you can't enter there. Everywhere has become a residential complex. When you enter, they identify the outsiders. We become outsiders.
The poor people came. Let's say by God's grace, good people came. People who were somewhat educated, cultured people. It's like we attended a school with them. We learned from their manners as if we attended a school.
The arrival of the scribe, the arrival of education, the arrival of vision, the arrival of modernization, you are rapidly changing your shell.
Pros and cons. So at first not much happened. Only the fields by the sea were sold. Those were the fields that were not liked. In fact, among the elderly it is said like this. They used to give those to the sons-in-law because it was sandy. Then when those places became very valuable, we did it like this. I also enjoy talking to the elderly a lot. Well, we gave those places away, thinking they weren't worth anything. Then they turned out to be lucky. Things like that were happening anyway.
An experience I had on this topic when my father fell ill. There was a professor named Necat Bilge here during his youth. He was already a doctor at the time. He told me to find Professor Necat. So, how do we find Professor Necat in the 90s? How do we manage? While searching, we found him by chance. When we went to Professor Necat, it was a beautiful example of friendship, camaraderie, and life within Selimpasha. I mean, when he saw my father, he hugged him. The man started to cry. My father hugged him back. A friendship that started here at the summer house.
I know the very old ones. I formed very good friendships with the locals. I loved the local people very much. The people loved us too. We provided many family services. Because my father was a doctor, there were already great fishing captains here, like Emir Reis, Salih Reis. They had my father's clinic in Samatya. They used to come to him for checkups when they came to fish in the Samatya Bay. That's how they met, and they insisted, saying, "Doctor, you must come to our village." And they brought my father here by force. And they did very well. May God bless them. We had beautiful days with our fishing captains. Currently, as a summer resident, as a former summer resident, I loved my village very much.
Let me put it this way. The celebrities of that time, you know how they go to Alaçatı Çeşme now? Back then, this place was Alaçatı Çeşme because it was easy to reach.
There were two cinemas back then. There was one large cinema. This is the bakery on the way to Kadirhas, Golden Road. Behind Altınbaşak, there was a very large cinema. Then when you go a bit further back, it is across from FTT, that cinema. In those years, cinema was more prominent. There used to be films like this. Men would shout in caves, for example. There was the movie Kartal Tibeti. Hit the door, they would parade something, the prisoners.
In the 1960s, Kumburgaz, Celaliye, Kamilova, Silivri, Selimpaşa, these are summer residents, citizens from Istanbul, used to come here to build summer houses. These places truly became beautiful days in our lives with them, beautiful lives. And in Selimpaşa and its surroundings, that's what I would say. Personally, I think the best quality of Istanbul's good. The highest quality citizens settled here, but later some of these citizens moved to Bodrum, Çeşme, and dispersed. They left from here.
But as a result, we were turned into a neighborhood for obvious reasons. And now we are a neighborhood.
The dissolution of our municipality, we are experiencing difficulties. But when we had our own municipality, we lived in a wonderful Selimpaşa.
Selimpaşa, after the year 1971, had become a township. In this process, the first 4 to 5 years were naturally a phase of adaptation.
After Selimpaşa moved to the municipality, initially we made many commitments. We said we would build a hospital. We said we would bring the hospital. We said we would bring the university. And we would also equip the educational areas. We mentioned Selimpaşa.
There used to be a tiny health center. For example, the tiny health center was later expanded into a larger facility for the first time with health services. In 98, we laid the foundation of our hospital in the 98th. There is currently a state hospital in Selimpaşa.
I graduated. In July, I served there as O Zaman Selimpaşa Belde.
The majority of mayors, or rather those involved in politics, but mayors do a lot of things. I mean, how should I say, they don't treat the public very well. They say things like, sure, we'll take care of it, even for things that won't happen. That was the thing I hated the most. Some people wouldn't say yes to anything, like Mr. Mayor and so on. Learn that there's no law for this, no warning, no way out, no escape, nothing. They would say, no, you're asking for the wrong things, and so on. I was a bit strict in my approach. I mean, I was a stickler for rules. Rules, but not unwritten ones. Of course, we were enforcing the written rules. Some people loved it, some didn't. They would call me crazy, and so on.
Süleyman Demirel, of course, had a special place in our lives during those years. Whenever I said something, he would listen, and after 2 or 3 days, he would call me. He would say, I'm coming to Selimpaşa on this day. He would tell me not to open something, and would come that day.
Selimpaşa, İstanbul'un batısında yer alan şirin bir tatil beldesi. Yazın 10.000 kişi, kışınsa 200.000 kişinin yaşadığı Selimpaşa'da belde belediyesi yoğun bir çalışma içinde.
Selimpaşa, İstanbul'a 60 kilometre uzaklıkta bir tatil beldesi. Doğal güzellikleri ve deniziyle İstanbulluları kendine çeken Selimpaşa'nın yerleşik nüfusu 10.000.
There is a place called Doğantepe. On the road to Yukarıyaniş. I wandered around while going downwards. It's not night, but I went out for a normal daytime walk. I used to like that, a walk or something on a holiday. One of our municipal police officers is not climbing on the tree picking figs. Hussein saying, "Oh my God, I think I heard the president's voice," to himself. I said, you heard it, come down. Otherwise, I'll bring you down myself. He started jumping. I said, don't jump, stay there. And he came down slowly. What am I doing here today? It's Saturday. There is also a thing, there is also a duty. The market was being set up. On Saturdays, we later moved it to the market. But on Saturday, instead of being at the municipality in Selimpaşa, you were supposed to be in the field, far away, on the Yanis Road, picking figs. I felt like it or something. I said, man, what a fool you are. I said, I won't tell anyone, but you also don't tell anyone the president caught me or something like that. Okay, the president is trying to kiss my hand or something.
In the 70s, we are between the 70s and 80s. A problem in Turkey, the biggest problem is the right-left conflict. There was the same problem in Selimpaşa as well. We had a youth sports club. And we also had the Marmara Sports Club.
Youth, sports, Marmara Sports, all of these were there. But back then there was unity and togetherness. There were coffee houses, evening chats and conversations. We would say, tomorrow we'll do this and that, tomorrow. Afternoon we'll have a match. Everyone would gather, can you believe it? There were so many people that even those who were substitutes were upset. They would say, hey, why didn't you let me play? They would say, back then it was like that. Friendship and camaraderie were very different. I mean, I can't even compare it to now.
At that time, there weren't many social activities, though. Sports activities, social activities were more lively and faster compared to today. We had two sports clubs, Marmara Sports, Youth Sports. Both were in great competition, and they also trained very good athletes. For Turkish football?
In those days, we played football at Selimpaşa Sports Club. In the following years, there were two clubs. When there were two clubs at Marmara Sport, we played football. Later, during my tenure as mayor, we merged the two clubs. We ensured that sports were conducted in this area as a single Selimpaşa Sports Club. We tried to help.
And still, one of the ball throwers in the colors of Selimpaşa Sports, they say that the reason for one of them to indicate the bowstring is that their colors are orange and green. This is also in its logo.
While melon and okra give their colors to the sports club, they also bring the livelihood of the homes, of course. The sources of livelihood obtained from the vineyards left from the exchange period. Over time, it will give way to melon and okra, along with fishing, while the advancing years will experience a period where transportation reaches its peak. To the residents here,
in the past, this place was like a city of grapes. It was a place with wineries. All these hills you see were vineyards. We even had many vineyards ourselves. There was a winery. They mostly planted a grape variety called Kınalı Yapıncak.
There were wineries. There were wineries connected to the vineyards. In fact, we even had one. But they were all left from the Greeks. That viticulture continued for a while. But in the end, it gradually disappeared. It disappeared last in Ortaköy. They even used to make it in the houses in Ortaköy. As far as I remember here, there were 4 or 5 wineries. I was born in 1949. The 1960s are years I know very well. So they also gradually closed down and disappeared.
I can say of Istanbul, all its needs, the Topatan melon, used to be met here. In front of us there is Tepecik, there is Murat Bey. These were also planted with Topatan melons, but for some reason Selimpaşa was very prominent.
I am 68 years old. For 68 years, ever since I can remember, there is Kavanolu who throws the ball in Selimpaşa. But whether it's due to the climate or something else, it's causing illnesses now. It's causing illness. We don't have as many good ball throwers like we used to. Okra farming. We have our okra. Our most famous things, okra from Selimpaşa who throws the ball. Marketing is an issue for okra farming here. The citizens are slowly reaching the point of giving up.
Because there was no market, you would send it to the wholesale market. In the environment of the wholesale market there, it's entirely up to the discretion of the broker there. For instance, when you expect 5 lira but receive 2 lira, you experience every disappointment. but you are helpless and have to send it. You have no other source of income. If there were public markets like today, I would have consumed what I produced. If that were the case, both your earnings and expenses would decrease. Of course, it would be very nice.
In Selimpasha, in the area we refer to as our tea garden, there was a pier made on iron legs with a wooden top. I remember that pier. In the past, sailboats with masts used to come there. Some of them didn't even have engines. They used to sail to and from Istanbul. The Topatan melon from here. The Topatan melon of Selimpasha is famous. Then comes okra. After okra comes onion. These were some of the prominent income-generating products of Selimpasha.
In the early days, when there weren't many roads, they used to transport melons from somewhere around here by boats. So farmers would bring their melons from the fields. Melons were transported to Istanbul by boats via the sea.
Growing melons is really not easy. When there is a disease, the whole field burns. All the effort you put in goes to waste. In a short time, within a week or 10 days, they grow, you harvest them and sell them.
Until the Topatan melon appeared, everyone would go for the entire immature melon harvest. After the immature melons were sorted out, 2 melons were left on the vine. Until those melons reached a certain size, people would take care of them like their own children. But what sweet melons they were, what beautiful melons they were.
And for example, you have your own field, you added the cannonball jar and sent it to me as a gift. I would definitely put his seeds in a separate container and return them to you. So your seeds wouldn't become degenerate. I couldn't give your seeds to someone else's. We would write on them the incoming melons. For example, it came from Mr. Kamil, it came from Mr. Errol, or they would write it themselves.
Okara is generally for those with little space, and when the family is large, it's even better with little space. Or renting space from someone else to get a place for okra, and so on. It was small-scale farming, a small job. But it wasn't bad either. It was making money. The girls were preparing their dowries by picking okra.
When okra is planted in April, everyone goes to the okra field. At least 10-11 people are present in the field, and there is a lunch. I was particularly fond of these lunches. If there was an okra planting somewhere, and I knew the people, I would definitely want to go there for lunch, because it was like a wedding feast. It was like a picnic in the field.
In Selimpasha, the production of okra is really high. This was started by my grandfather Rashid. He went from Bağcılar in Istanbul, got the seeds for it. And the planting started here. It has continued since that day.
Well, there were as many farmers as there were fishermen. I mean, even when I bought tomatoes, they smelled wonderful. When it rained, the smell of the earth would come. There's none of that left now.
This farming and fishing, yes, farming and fishing. Ataturk already said so, sir, like when he said you gave us very little land. Look, the sea is there, work, and earn.
Those who had boats were trying to make a living from the sea. At that time, there were plenty of fish here. Can you tell me what Amshi fish is?
The AMSI fishing on the boat that docked here would load 3 truckloads, 3,000 crates of AMC fish. AMSI fish, brother. If you let out fishermen, they would even finish the sea's water. Let me tell you, they would even finish the sea's water.
Fishing. Of course, for me in '84, in that year, our friends were pulling CIK around this time. In my opinion, this CIK is something that severely harms fish products. The things our friends were saying, for example, ban this. We were also trying to ban these things at that time. But the same friends later came to me saying they wanted to pull these themselves. In such matters, it's really tiresome. One of the reasons for the fish population becoming problematic is this.
Fishing has also died due to the pollution of the seas. There used to be good fishing here. Here's the harbor. It has this, it has that, it has a pier. But there are no fish left due to unregulated fishing and the dumping of waste. It has come to this state.
There were 3 options. For those not engaged in farming, what will someone without a boat do if not fishing? They will sell their land. What's the easiest? A truck. They will get a truck and make a living.
Here are the fields. well below their value. For 2 acres, 5 acres, 10 acres, depending on the condition of the field, a truck was bought and cash business was entered.
I mean, the job of most middle-aged young men was trucking, and they loved it. They constantly brought loads to places like Izmir and Istanbul, and they seemed like the happiest people in the world. I mean...
One of the reasons my father went to Izmir is also this. Of course, he goes to Izmir in 1955. He has a truck that he bought, I suppose, around 1946. So he goes to Izmir after making quite a few changes to it. He settles there. He went to a summer house. We stayed for 18 years, then we returned. My father was also a transporter.
We used to go to every region of Thrace, load from there, and transport wheat to the Istanbul mill. But our business was very good back then. After 74 from transportation, we made money. I mean...
In the village of Selimpaşa, there were over 200 trucks. In every household, every house had a truck. Look, Ahmet bought a truck, so I should buy one too, sell somewhere. Ahmet sold it, buy and sell somewhere. For 3 years, 5 years, our trucks were like this, newly acquired. Then people couldn't maintain the trucks anymore.
Now, as the truck was used, the tire wore out, the engine wore out. Of course, the man wanted to go back again, but when he returned the truck he had given, he couldn't even get a tenth of that field.
Back then, a truck was bought by selling 10 acres, if only we still had those 10 acres now. Mr. Kamil, probably. Today it would be worth 50 trucks.
If those fields were available today, while buying 50 or 100 cars, unfortunately, and the car is gone too. The field is gone too. Even the source of income is gone. The result is disappointment.
He bought a truck. I don't know. He sold it, bought a truck. All the lands, all things are gone.
If you went to ask for a girl's hand in marriage, what does your son do? He's a transporter. Oh, does he have a truck? The brand is asked. You know, back then, the quality of the son's job was valued based on the brand of the truck.
When we used to go to school in the mornings, the first start of the trucks, the filling of the air tanks, especially the Ford 1210 of that period, even now, if I hear it sound, I would feel excited. I would definitely feel excited. It's a memory from my childhood.
Together with my brother, we doubled the trucks. We had 2 trucks. Every day, 10 trucks, 15 trucks of sugar. When holidays approached, we'd take them from the factories. All this money was always given in cash. It went in cash. It was received. It was given. Not a single lira was missing from anyone. 5 lira, 10 lira. I put down since and I asked for it. It turned out to be extra. I took it. I brought it back.
We never worked with cash up front. Whether local, from the surroundings, or from Thrace, all the truck drivers. I can say there were no old truck drivers who didn't know me. In all cities. When we do it, he does his job, goes and unloads on the first day. If he had received the money on the way back, he would definitely stop by and give us the money. Well, he might not have received the money. He just leaves. He might not be able to come back in 3 days or 5 days. To someone else, he would say, like, give it to this person when passing by. Now, there's no such thing.
The values lost in craftsmanship make our hearts ache, indeed. But unfortunately, what we've lost is not limited to this. As the lullabies, rhymes, and customs of the families who came with the population exchange slowly fade from our daily lives, they continue to live on in the memories preserved by our elders. We asked about the old customs both to preserve these traditions and pass them on to future generations, and to capture the happiness on their faces as they remember those customs. To the people of Selimpaşa.
There used to be very nice entertainments. Back then there was a sense of togetherness, like first batch, second batch, third batch, fourth batch. Usually we from Silivri would go in 3 batches. They were going with the soldiers. Brother Aygoren, may God rest his soul, was a brother we loved very much. Every batch going to the military would definitely visit Brother Aygoren. They would kiss Brother Aygoren's hand. They would seek his opinions and receive his prayers. After that, they would definitely not leave without seeing Brother Igoran. Without going to his mansion, to the place where he sat, without playing the drum in the building where he resided, absolutely no one would go to the military.
He was very curious. There's a story about grabbing a pillow at weddings. We were very young. He would take his horse like this. He had a very beautiful special horse. He would definitely go immediately like that. He would take the pillow from the wedding house, from the girl's house. Someone else would go later, take a lamp or something like that. While he was busy with such things, once they went to a place in the village of Çakıl. I heard it was Elbasan or Çakıl. Jumping off the truck, he would go to the girl's house. He would take a pillow. Meanwhile, he's hanging out with my jacket. That's what ruins his life. After that, I mean, he was a bit dragged along too.
While trying to take a shortcut from the car, he trips, falls onto the asphalt, and while on leave from the military, he becomes bedridden for another 46 years.
He was injured, but Errol brother didn't seem like he was injured. I mean, whatever happens in Turkey, all the friends went there. Everyone was telling him about it. He was aware of everything. He was a very valuable person.
Exactly, right here it used to say Errol FM, and a film was shot here. They've painted over it now. Let me put it this way, it's like this. There used to be records, you know. There was a turntable, there was a radio. Imagine in the 60s, I mean.
Yes, there was even Errol Aygoran, not Errol Aygoran. There was a picture of the moon, Aygoran. Yes, brother Errol was there. There was no music at that time. There was a poster where Aygoran wrote, Asha was listening to music from a record there. Everyone was going, he was sitting in that corner. He was chatting with him.
Which record came out first? Ezangul's record. Whoever brings it first, hold that record. And after drinking, he comes normally, him, until 1 in the night. Errol Abi played my record. He was putting it on, letting people listen.
A long time ago, there were very beautiful soldier festivities. They would start a week in advance. Every day they would play at a soldier's house, drums would be played. Then night festivities would be held, meals would be eaten. Then there was a soldier send-off. The whole village would be there. From right down there, from the port to the stop. Imagine people.
Weddings organized by the patrols are different. Weddings organized by the Dramal are different. Weddings organized by the Roma are different. But culturally, in terms of dance style, everyone is close to each other. For example, there used to be weddings from my childhood, 3 days. 3 days. The groom would be taken, brought. The groom's shave would be done in the square. We were little children, we would watch. After that, tables would be set up in front of the houses and meals would be served.
Meals were cooked in large cauldrons. The host of the wedding would either slaughter a calf or 3-4 rams.
Everyone would bring 3 or 5 sheep each to the cauldrons. All the women in the village who cooked famous 7-8 different dishes would be prepared, 3 days and 3 nights.
I had this kind of luck. My mother was the person who prepared the wedding meals. Usually, you know, it was my mother who prepared the wedding meals for our friends, acquaintances, and relatives. For that reason, almost both at home and at weddings, we frequently encountered these situations. I mean,
they would continue for 3 days and 3 nights. In the past, they were held in front of everyone's house. Weddings. Meals were also served in the houses we referred to as mansion houses. That was the neighbor's house. Meals were served there.
Tables were being set up on the streets. Even if you just passed by, you would be invited to the table. You would eat your meal, play the game.
Horse-drawn carriages were used as wedding cars. Later, tractors came out. For the tractors, then cars came out to pick up the bride with cars. There was plenty of food and drink back then, around here.
When they arrived in front of the groom's house, they would cover it with rugs. They would cover it with a rug so that no one would see. They wouldn't show the bride to anyone at that time either. The young men too. When they arrived at the place of the wedding procession, either in a barn or in a closed place, the girls would play with games. There was an instrument we referred to as a dare, which others called a tambourine. like this. The girls would play with them. In front of the wedding host, a large pole would stand in front of the door like this. For the children, it was forbidden to look at the girls in that wedding house. According to their own rules,
the groom gets a haircut the day before. The day after meals are eaten, people sit down and have conversations.
First, the women would have a henna night among themselves. Then the next day, it would be Saturday or Sunday. Usually, the drum would play for 2 days. There would be plenty of drunk people. They would drink when they found malt-free wine. I didn't like those things at all. I mean...
Back then, the young men of the village were, of course, more daring. Young men, well, even our Selimpasha, who was known to be very tough. For weddings, for instance, when we took brides from outside villages, we would all get on trucks, like a big group. We would go on trucks to bring brides. After that, of course, there would be a lot of fights among the young men. I mean, while they were playing, someone would go blocked away, having had a few drinks. Oh, for him to cut my father off. Come on, let's fight.
There were incidents of indigestion. Now, when you look at it, it seems very meaningless. But when the young person here went there, it was as if he was going to befriend the girls there. And it was reacted to as if he was taking away their values.
OLD weddings, I mean those very bumpy old weddings. Very agreed upon, very expensive. Food, drinks, having a wedding for 2 days, 2.5 days is a lot. But it's good that it stopped because no one can handle it anymore. You can't do it anyway. Which street will you do it on? The police will come, the gendarmerie will come, or the municipal officers will come, get up, lup, and so on. You can't do that anymore.
Now, those wedding customs, I don't like them anyway. Those flashy, showy things. There are convoys, people die. A convoy is made, mountain, wedding. I don't like these things. These are wrong things.
We had a brother's wedding at Selimpasha Hall. Of course, our fathers were ignorant. We loved each other. That night there were glances and so on. We loved each other. Was 19 years old. She was 16 years old. Still, she waited. He went to the military, came back. I asked for her hand. They didn't give her. After that, we loved each other very much. I eloped with my wife. If it happened, again, I would elope again, this time without asking, without consulting the elders.